Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for a very exciting and topical webinar, Demystifying Microsoft Copilot. My name is Gareth Boyle, the Marketing Manager for Microsoft here at Fusion 5, and I'm joined today by COE Lead for AI and Copilot, Troy Gerber. Before we kick things off, just a couple of quick bits of housekeeping. After the presentation, we will host a brief Q&A. So if you do have any questions as we go, please feel free to ask them in the top right-hand corner of your Teams application or browser, and we'll address them in the final 10 minutes today. After the session has ended, we'll also share a recording of the presentation with you all, and for those who could not attend today as well. So with that out of the way, let's kick things off with our first speaker. Over to you, Troy.
Thanks, G. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Troy Gerber. I'm the COE lead for Azure AI and Copilots for Fusion 5. For those of you who joined, don't know Fusion 5 are, we are a Microsoft partner. We play in the Dynamics, Modern Work, and just about every platform play they have. My role at Fusion 5 is to look after everything we do around Azure AI, and then obviously with the wonderful and very relevant Copilot, that is becoming quite a big part of my day-to-day. So we're doing the session today, and we're calling it Demystifying Copilot because there's a lot of sort of stuff out there about Copilot, and there are a lot of names called Copilot, and we want to make sure that you're aware of what they are, what they do, and where they fit in from a person that is using the tools available by Microsoft, or somebody who has it built into their applications as well. This is not a salesy type section, so we're going to be sort of speaking quite plain language as much as possible. And if you have any questions, there is a Q&A panel. This live is slightly delayed by about 10 seconds. So once you put into the Q&A, Gareth will have a look at the question and make sure it's and vetted, and then we'll go through questions at the end of the session. So let's head off and start our journey. So, introduction to Microsoft Copilot. Copilot, Microsoft describes this as your everyday AI companion. When you hear the term Microsoft Copilot, basically think AI-powered assistant. When we say Microsoft Copilot AI-powered assistant, it doesn't specifically really talk about a specific product in the Microsoft suite that has Copilot capability. It's a general term that refers to the AI-powered assistance provided by Microsoft. So the sort of say umbrella term for Microsoft's AI-powered assistance is Copilot. We'll go down a bit of a run through of what that means in the context of some of the different products, how they work, and also how the name changes, or how the use of the word Copilot in the context of the products that Microsoft sell and provide services for, how that kicks in as well. The Copilot that everybody has access to, and this is irrespective of if you have a Microsoft subscription, if you're just a user, anybody on the planet who has access to a browser and you'd like to use Microsoft Copilot, you can, and that is through something called copilot.microsoft.com. I mentioned we're not going to be trying to do too many salesy and fancy words, so let's just say it what it is. This basically is, if you ever use ChatGPT, this is where you can go to and use ChatGPT at zero cost at copilot.microsoft.com. The reason why we say that, ChatGPT is powered by large language models, specifically GPT 3.5 and all the way up to 4.5. Microsoft, through their relationship with OpenAI, have access to these models as well. They've gone and staged these models in their data center, and they've created a product called copilot.microsoft.com that anybody can use by going to that URL. You don't need to log in to use it. You can just use it as it is, and it is free to use. There's no charge on top of that. There are variations, very much like in with ChatGPT. There's an option to go for a premium SKU where you pay a little bit more, and then you get access to a little bit more feature and capability. That is also an option here, but that is not essential to be able to use this. We'll jump in and actually do a demo towards the end of the session of how this works and how it fits into the bigger picture. You might notice from the screenshot that I have on screen now that I'm actually logged in here, and it says protected. Let's quickly talk about that. If you do have an Office 365 subscription or any Microsoft subscription, And then it doesn't really matter if it's a business or it's an enterprise, if it's academic, that makes no difference at all. You're able to log in to the copilot.microsoft.com experience, and with your Entra credentials, with your Active Directory credentials. Once you've done that, you'll then enter something called protected mode. And that means that whatever you search for, whatever you ask this Copilot, will basically live in the context of your tenant. It won't be used for retraining, it won't be used in any logs, it won't be used to track anything. It'll basically just basically sit inside your enterprise tenant. That's where it works. Why would that even be something you'd want to do? And if you're a CISO, this will make a huge impact. Is when we are using generative AI tools that sit outside our organization, many of them, sometimes either through default option or because you've opted in, when you do a search or you use the generative AI to answer questions against data that you provide, that information is used to train the model again. So next time it's better, which means that your data is now sitting somewhere else as well as out inside your enterprise. By using Copilot on Microsoft.com with a protected mode, you are 100% guaranteed that whatever you do inside that Copilot, whatever you ask, if it's proprietary data, information from your organization, anything you might do competitive research, will never be used to retrain, will never be logged anywhere, and won't go out anywhere. So it's a wonderful protected experience, which is completely different from some of the experiences we're having other tools. So what can you do with your Microsoft Copilot? And this is the next slides are quite generic around the capability, and they are the default workloads that you can do with Copilots. Some of them, as you go into different Copilot products, get a bit refined, but generally the concept is simple. You can create content, and this is what everybody was doing with GPT from the day it came out, is how do you create a chicken noodle soup? Can I go and convince my boss to send me to a conference? You ask questions and it creates content. You can use that content. So create an email asking my boss to send me to a conference in America because it's great for my career development. And please go and do that, and it'll go and do that creation for you. When we don't dive into the context of some of the other products, you'll see that create is a bit more curated and a bit more specific. But generally, as a first point of call, your Copilot is there to help you remove the blank page syndrome and go from I have nothing to I have a phenomenal draft that I can use as a basis and move forward. I use the word draft intentionally. Copilots are literally, as the name implies, they're co-pilots. They're not there to take your job away from you. It's there to give you an easier path to get into the next step of what you need to do. So instead of sitting with a blank email, I can use a Copilot to generate a draft, which I can go and change over. Same with the Word document, PowerPoint, whatever it needs to be. So that's our first thing in create. And when we do our demos, we're going to sort of follow this path, actually going through some of those creation scenarios. You can get a feel of how that changes in context. The next thing is edit. In the edit space, we're able to take information we have and give it to the Copilot and say, I've got this email. Please go and read over it and rewrite it in a format that is more friendly and less antagonistic, or make it a longer email, make it a shorter email. Write it as if it was a 12-year-old reading it. So you can actually use it to edit content that you've already created or content that you have. It works really well with text-based content. That's really where it works right now. But we know coming down the line, that's going to be moving over to media content as well. I think everybody who's on this webinar has most likely heard of some of the amazing image and video editing capabilities that generative AI is providing as well. The third one is understanding. So I'm able to take my Copilot and say, yes, somebody sent this to me, or this is a document I got, or this is the website that I'm visiting. I don't want to go and look through it and read everything. Please give me a summary. Tell me what they are talking about. Give me the context of what this Word document is about. And the Copilot is able to then reason across that information, be it inside something that you've pasted or something that's inside your file system, and then give you an output against that. So it's able to understand the information, it will derive what the information is about and give you information against that. And once you have that, we get to the last part is where I can say, right, I now want to ask you questions. And this is where the Copilot, when you give it a piece of information, and we will run through that in a demo a little bit later, I can say, I've given you some information, maybe it's 10, 15, 20 pages of something, and I'm now going to ask you questions, and I want you to use that information I gave you as your basis and then answer the questions off that. And this is something you can do in the free version where you basically cut and paste the information, or something you can use in some of the products, and we will be looking at those in a few slides, where I can use the information I already have as part of my work profile or even public profile, and say, fine, let me ask you questions about this data, this information. Now, I have mentioned about that when we talk about Microsoft Copilot, it's an umbrella term. We had a very quick look at a screenshot of Copilot on Microsoft.com, which is one of the first sort of variations where we have a Microsoft Copilot, but it's specifically a single web interface where anybody can use. So where else do these other Copilots live? And this is where we look at the extended Copilot family. So just for the sake of understanding how Copilots work, they use Azure and AI, especially OpenAI, not only OpenAI, but specifically Azure OpenAI, to do all the work for them. So when you're using a Copilot, it's basically using the same models that is used by ChatGPT, but with a lot more augmentation around it to make sure around things like privacy and security, etc. There are different Copilots depending on where you are working in the Microsoft suite, and I'll quickly run through them briefly. We will send that we can spend a lot more detail around the M365 version, because that's the one that seems to be the one that we uses. So in the Power Platform, you can use the Copilot to help you generate low-code applications, basically through natural language. So with Power Platform, I can go, instead of building a Power App from scratch, I can go into the Power Platform and say, I want to give you natural language instructions, and I can say, I need you to build me an app that will allow me to capture mileage for my fleet. And you push a button, it'll then use the generative AI and the power of Azure to understand what you're trying to do, and then it'll actually go and build that application for you. The same applies inside of Power Automate, where you can have it build workflows for you with natural language. So you could just say, literally just say, every time I receive an email from my manager, send me a message in Teams saying you've got a new email from your manager, so that I'm alerted about it straight away. Typically, you'd have gone to a canvas and drop and drag that in. With Copilot, you're able to just use the usual words and it'll build the framework for you. So moving across into the Dynamics space, in Dynamics has a huge set of products of its own, very specific to customer needs: sales, ERP, service, finance and operations. Inside each of those applications, there will be a Copilot. I think at the moment we have them in sales, service, and finance and operations. We're in GA recently as well, where you'll have a Copilot living alongside your data in those line of business applications, and sometimes actually bringing that into other applications like Outlook as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And now that Copilot lives on top of the business data that I'm working with. So from a sales point of view, I might go and say, give me a summary of all the interactions I've had with Contoso Holdings in the last month. And the Copilot will reason across all my data inside of CRM, Dynamics CRM, and go and find all actions, emails, meetings, any notes that have been put against any changes to that contact, and surface it, and I can then start interacting. So a very, very natural language, easy way. M365, we're going to go into a bit more detail, so I'm going to skip over that, quickly go through the others. From a security point of view, we have Security Copilot. So Copilot for security, that specifically looks at providing a very simple natural language interface to debug and work with security breaches. So you can very, very quickly find the cause, even write code to rectify it as well. In Windows, there's a default Windows button for Copilot that gives you access to the Windows ecosystem. So I can click on the Copilot button. We will do that in one of the demos and actually get some context of doing something Windows. I can say enable dark mode, extend my screens, use natural language, and will interact with the operating system. But it also connects to the free version of Copilot, so Copilot on Microsoft.com. So I can actually just click on the Copilot button in Windows and ask the same type of questions I would ask of Copilot on Microsoft.com, and it'll answer those questions for me. And I'll get that in a sidebar pane that pops up. The Windows Copilot also, if I have a valid subscription, will connect to the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which means with one button on the Windows ecosystem, so in Windows 11, click on the Copilot button, I can actually ask questions not only against my operating system, public data, but I can also go and say, actually just switch over to work mode, and I'll just ask questions against my work data as well. So really, really cool. So the Copilot with data protection is what we looked at earlier. That's Copilot on Microsoft.com, but where you've actually logged in. So you said, okay, I've logged in now, and I'm now protected because I have an Entra ID and whatever it is inside my tenant. And the last one is, you could say, a bit of the granddaddy of Copilots, GitHub Copilot. It was the first Copilot to actually launch. It launched before we even had a name, Copilot, and before we were running around talking about ChatGPT. So it's been around for a while. And its sole purpose is to help developers write code to a point where most developers reckon they are 70 to 80% more productive using GitHub Copilot. So there are, in total, when we look at all the different variations of AI assistants embedded into the Microsoft products and services, they typically are named as after that service. So Copilot for Power Platform, Copilot for Dynamics Sales, Copilot for Security, Copilot for Microsoft 365. There are about 160 different variations of either name Copilot or something that uses the Copilot capability to provide a service using generative AI. I'm not going to spend too much time on the OpenAI side, but making sure that we're aware that everything we do uses Azure OpenAI. So we'll get the latest version of the GPTs from OpenAI are available through your data center. They sit in your local data center. They're not serviced out of different areas. So if you're in Australia, New Zealand, and you're using the OpenAI service, you can say use the Australia East data center, and New Zealand's data center coming around towards the end of this year, I believe, will have the same capability. And we leverage cognitive services a lot in these models because they basically are using search indexes that have been enhanced to provide the capability. So we can extend. Right, we are going to focus now and just move down one specific path, and that's going to be the Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. For those who are not familiar, Microsoft 365 is what Microsoft call the productivity suite. So if you have Microsoft 365, you typically have Outlook, Exchange, PowerPoint, Word, all those applications that are on your desktop, and a few more. If you have an MSQ, you most likely have a Windows part of that as well. And those are productivity focused Copilots. This is a paid for Copilot experience. So this is where you've moved away from, I'm using this app that's available at no cost. You're saying, I want to specifically use it, and it's a licensed Copilot that your organization buys as a per user license. And that is currently, I'll give you the USD rate. If you're not, obviously check with your rates local to your country. I think it's about $30 per user per month. And depending where you are, it's going to be specific to your currency. So let's have a look at M365 Copilot, and let's have a look at what we get with that. So Copilot for M365 powers the following applications: Word, PowerPoint, Excel, OneNote, Outlook Teams, Loop, Whiteboard, and Forms. So any of those applications that you have, when you enable the Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's going to light up a Copilot icon, and it's also going to immediately start acting differently. It's going to go and say, right, you now have the ability to leverage generative AI, and you have the ability to leverage information in your tenant, so your Office 365 tenant, and I'm going to start helping you do that. So why would we go this route versus going down or just using the free one? There's security, obviously. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing is inside our data center. So from a trusted security point of view, we know that it's going to be inside of our tenant. Nothing's going to be reused. And it's also going to have the context of using our tenant. So we can count on it to being responsible and secure because we're getting it from a partner we can trust, in this case, which is Microsoft. The idea is that it supercharges productivity. The idea is to be able to unlock access to information, knowledge in the organization, so I can do things a lot faster and a lot quicker. Once again, just repeating, is a co-pilot, so it's there to help us do this. It's not there to do it for us. And you'll see in the demos that whenever we do use the Copilot in the productivity space, even though it takes us from 0 to 80% in a matter of seconds, it's always going to ask us if we want to use the information we gave. So we get the opportunity to look over it and make sure, as subject matter experts in what we do, that the information provided is correct. And amplifies creativity. And I can, when I saw, when this slide came out a couple of months back, it was like, oh, creativity really? Yes, it does, because we tend to write in a very stoic way, and having the Copilots available to say, write that in longer form or shorter form, or describe it differently, or make it formal, less formal. It is quite an amazing thing to actually see. It gives you not only a new experience which you can share with people that you're sharing information with, but also educates on how something can be different. So a bit of a learning opportunity there as well. So it helps you actually innovate, and you find that some of those things just get passed through as we go along. So let's quickly focus and get on break. So let's do a quick recap, and then we'll jump into some nitty-gritty, and then we'll move into more than the demo space, so we can actually see some of this Copilot capability working. So Copilot as a term is a catch-all phrase. It basically means Microsoft's AI-powered assistants. If you want to just start using it without any subscription costs and just want to use the power of what you get in OpenAI and ChatGPT, you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. That is the base Copilot, and you can just start using it the same way you're using ChatGPT. And we'll look at a little bit later on how it works the same, but is actually different in the way it does things, and very impressive so. There are a whole bunch of Copilots depending on the Microsoft application you actually use across all the different spheres, from Office applications to business applications to security to Windows to developer experiences. And these typically are named for their product. So Copilot for Microsoft 365 is an AI assist just for productivity. Copilot for dynamic sales is going to be a Copilot. It helps people from a sales enablement point of view. Copilot for security is a Copilot that focuses purely on security and securing your environment, etc., etc. Cool. So navigating Copilot's interface and functionality. So we've got this new tool, and in a perfect world, we'll just get a tool and it'll just work phenomenally from day one, and it does. And we just know how to use it. We wouldn't need to learn to do anything, but that's not really the truth. We need to understand how these Copilots work so we can get the maximum benefit of them. So when you connect with a Copilot, there are 3 different ways which the Copilot shows up to you. The first one is the standalone experience. And the standalone experience you would have seen earlier in the slide was things like Copilot or Microsoft.com. There are a couple of other examples, and we'll be looking at one of those a bit later, specifically Copilot Chat in Microsoft Teams. So this is basically like the same sort of interface you'd have with a ChatGPT. Currently, there are 2 of these experiences in the ecosystem, Copilot or Microsoft.com and Copilot Chat, but they are coming to other products in the Copilot ecosystem as well. So I would watch announcements for that. I think we can talk about on the call specifically. We've seen a few demos and it looks amazing. So this experience you currently have on screen basically gives you a single pane of glass across all your information, and the Copilot knows about that. So think of that on other applications as well. The second experience we have when we're working with Copilots is something called the embedded experience. And this is where the Copilot pops up in the context of the application you're using. The screenshot I have on right now is in Microsoft Word, and you'll see it when we do the demo. As soon as I open up Word, it detects I have a Copilot license, says, right, would you like to start drafting with Copilot, and gives me that pop-up. So it's embedded. And it's in the application itself. We'll have a look at that in one or two other applications. And it allows me to then interact with the application inline and also potentially interact with content inline. If I don't want to just use it as an inline experience and I want to do a little bit more, so I must start using that create, edit, update, understand capability. You have a Copilot button that sits inside your toolbar. And that, as soon as you click on that, it's going to open up something called the sidecar experience. And this is where a little sidecar pops up on the right-hand side, and it becomes a context-driven experience. Looking at the screenshot on screen now, you'll see that it has a couple of base prompts because it's sitting outside of the document saying, do you want to summarize or ask a question? You'll see the theme around that. And it has a dialog box, and we'll do that in a demo where I can start doing natural language questions, and also has the ability, and this is something that doesn't have parity across all the Copilots, but you'll see in this specific screenshot, there's a little microphone icon. So I can actually use my microphone instead of typing my prompt. I can actually go and just talk, and it will pick that up and then use that as a basis to get the Copilot to do what it needs to do. This might sound a bit weird right now, but we'll have a look at it in the demos and you'll see it working. It'll make a lot more sense. So I did use, in the last slide, I used the word prompt. So what is a prompt? So how do you talk to a Copilot? When you're talking to generative AI, you use something called a prompt, and the prompt is basically get us started. So if you think of prompting somebody, it says, hey, you should do this, go and do the dishes, as I prompt my children, and hopefully they go and do it. So we talk to Copilots in the form of prompts. So a prompt is how you ask a Microsoft 365 Copilot to do something for you. And it's conversational. If we think of the way we use Google, sometimes if I want something, I'll go, hey, Google. Oh, when I say that, it'll wake up. You go to Google and say chicken noodle soup recipe, and it gives you 1,000 links, and you take one of the top 5. You go, Google, how make chicken, and you get some links. That doesn't work very well when we work with generative AI. It's literally something waiting to have a conversation with you. So using plain, clear language and context makes the AI assistants work a lot more effectively. So prompt engineering, or the ability to ask prompts in the right way, it's going to be a skill that we'll have to learn as end users of generative AI to get the most benefit out of the AI solutions we are using. And in this case, we'll look at through the Copilot from Microsoft 365 lens. What does a prompt look like? What is the structure that makes the most sense and gets you the most value? Let's take it from top down. So you need to give it a goal. So what response do you want from the Copilot? So in this example, it says generate 3 to 5 bullet points. If I didn't say generate 3 to 5 bullet points and just started with the rest, the Copilot has no idea what I want to do, so it's going to just go down a generic route and probably just give me a bunch of text. Because I haven't told it all bullet points, it doesn't know, so it's going to make the most obvious assumption and provide me with context. So a goal for your question. So what your intent there is, not only intent what you want out is going to be key. Context to prepare me for meeting a client. So this tells the Copilot that not only do I want my output in bullet points, but what I'm asking it to look at is a meeting request. And now it knows it's looking at a meeting request with a specific client. That client may be part of a lookup into an ERP system that it needs to understand, and what we're going to be discussing, phase 3. So the context of the prompt is very, very important. So it's not make chicken noodle soup. It would be something like, give me a recipe based off the French style of cooking to prepare a meal of chicken noodle soup for 5 people. 3 of them are vegan and 2 aren't. That would be my goal as well as my context. The next is sources. Focus on email and Teams chat since June. So this makes a lot of sense in the Microsoft 365 Copilot. If we are using a free Copilot or we're using a other generative AI service, you may want to say something like, only give me that chicken noodle soup recipe again, but only give me ones that were created by Jamie Oliver and by Gordon Ramsay. So I'm basically giving it focus and saying, this is the sources I want you to use. You don't always need to have a source. You can leave it open-ended as well. If you do, it'll just basically use everything, but giving focus on a source gives you a better answer, and also gives the AI less to traverse across, because it's now really you're providing basically a narrowed experience. And last but not least, expectation. Please use simple language, so I can get to speed quickly. Once again, this might seem like a bit of an obvious one. You could leave that out, and the AI is going to make a best assumption, and it's going to provide you with the answer. Using terms like use simple language is important, because then you're going to get in simple language. Type of things that I would typically do there as well would be, I would say, be very concise, be concise and assume that I know nothing about the topic of discussion. So it'll give me a shortened answer, but it'll be explanations. I could say, I don't want to be concise. I could say be very detailed and provide references for every source, and write this in the format of a Shakespearean play. Not a good idea. Customers don't like Shakespearean plays, apparently. But that last expectation there makes a huge difference to the output you're going to get. So if we took that as our ways of working when we ask questions, we are going to get a way better answer from the AI than just saying, I'll be prepared for my meeting, because it has no context. Cool. So just to recap, prompting is the way you talk to generative AI. We want to make sure we understand what our goal is, so what we want back from it. We want to make sure we have context. Why am I asking this? What is this about? Where you're going to get your information from, and we'll see that in both contexts in a moment. And also make sure you are explaining what the expectation is when it comes to how I provide you the output. Cool. We are going to move on. We are focusing now on Microsoft 365, and I want to quickly show you the new ways of collaborating. So collaboration, I come from an enterprise content management background, and collaboration was a bit of a swear word, because collaboration is very much based off your perception of what collaboration is. Some people sharing a document is collaborating, some people sitting in the meeting room is collaborating. So we want to try and find ways that I can actually collaborate with people using the Copilot ecosystem as well. And the way where that comes in very handy is getting ready to work with people, and also when it comes to meetings. And I will do a demo of that a little bit later, but I have two examples coming up. The first is where I can actually use the Copilot to help me connect to somebody. So in this case, I'm using something called Copilot Chat in Teams, and we will see that in the demo. And my prompt to it is, when's my next meeting with? So I've given it, I've told it what I want, and I've told it where it's from. I haven't told it a source, because I'm using Microsoft 365, and meetings are stored inside of Outlook, and that's already derived because I'm inside that ecosystem. And what it's doing here is it's looking at Jonathan, who's my manager, and it says, your next meeting with Jonathan is a final run through for the webinar we're doing today. Jonathan was supposed to be with us, but unfortunately he's ill. Scheduled for the 10th, gives me the details, it tells me Gareth is the organizer, and it gives me a link through to that. So typically this is something I'd have to go through and find. Here I'm getting very, very quick snapshot of information just by asking a natural language question. Is providing context, and it's basically generating that aspect for me. So I can go and take that and start working. But the next thing it does, and this is the cool part, if you look at the year, what is the Copilot webinar about? Tell me more about Gareth, find my next meeting. It starts looking at the context of my question and the data that is found, and says, hey, you might need to know this as well, because this is the type of things that people typically ask, or is normal to ask. So it elevates this from just a conversation around a meeting, so I can collaborate more effectively with Jonathan, and actually elevates it into a meta prompt and says, right, would you like to know more? And I can actually now go and really deep dive and make sure I'm prepared for that meeting. The other space where, from a collaboration point of view, which is incredibly exciting, is where we're able to use the AI to recap meetings. And I'll do a demonstration on this a little bit earlier, but this is basically the recap scheme. I'm not going to spend time on this because I'm going to demonstrate this in a live demo, and you'll get a sense of that. But I can basically use the Copilot to help me remember the context of meetings and what happened. And this allows me to be able to collaborate with people, even if I didn't attend a meeting. But as I said, we'll do that in the demo. So let's move along. Security and privacy. Will Copilot find the CEO salary? Bit of a joke at the moment in the industry, because it's like, oh, I'll find my CEO salary. The answer is generative AI is not going to find the CEO salary unless it is allowed to. And this is why. The permissions that are set for content in M365 specifically are respected. So if right now, in the context of Copilot for Microsoft 365 specifically, or if it was Copilot for Sales, or if it was anything that's grounded in a subscription, if I cannot right now, through the normal ways of searching my enterprise information, my business information, find a piece of information based on my profile, so like the CEO salary, the Copilot won't find it, because the Copilot lives out to the back of your permissions. When it is invoked and it goes and does its magic, it first thing it says is, who am I doing this on behalf of? What permissions do they have? And it applies those principles to anything it finds. So it cannot find something that you don't have access to. And that's really, really important. So I'll repeat, the permissions you have set on your content in Microsoft 365 now are respected. The Copilot will not find anything that is not allowed to find in the context of the user who was using that Copilot at that time. The thing with privacy and security is, from a privacy point of view, nothing leaves your tenant when you're using a Copilot. So let's quickly take a quick segue and why we're bringing up this point. It might seem like something quite obvious. With a lot of the public available services that are available for using large language models and using generative AI, when you're using those services, they take the question you ask and the answer, and they even very often you get a little option to tick box if you liked it, and if you click that, say just, oh, this answer is right, they might ask you to describe it. Very often, unless you've specifically said you don't want it to be used, that information can be used to retrain the model. And that's great, because you want the models to get better. The chances, but now the information you've asked, and it might be proprietary to your organization, potentially live in a third-party system. And if they do, and they're already trained, it means some of my proprietary information is now part of the model's thinking. And as much as it's very unlikely that it's explicitly going to be used, we want to protect against that, because our IP is our IP. So when we use a Copilot in the context of a Microsoft 365 or the protected Copilot experience, and you do and you start having the conversation with the Copilot, whatever you do there does not leave your tenant, and is not used to retrain the models. It is basically, as soon as you close down that window, it is trashed. It goes away, it's never used again. In some context, you'll see that there is a history, so you understand what you've done before, but it's a history of what you asked, not of what the basis was. So just to recap on those two, permissions you have set on your data right now are respected, and nothing leaves your tenant. And we don't retrain AI models on your data. So from a security point of view, your security in place now is a security that's going to be adhered to. And from a privacy point of view, your current privacy and settings that you have in your current tenant are respected, and there is nothing that gets changed from there. And now, demos. We are done with the slides, and we are going to spend time going through a couple of demos. We're going to focus on the create, edit, understand, and ask experience, and then we will leave about, I think we've got close to about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max, and we'll leave 5 minutes for Q&A. So let's quickly jump through and look specifically at some great scenarios. I'm going to use Microsoft. I'm going to use PowerPoint as my first one. Actually, no. Let's quickly go through to Copilot on Microsoft.com. So this is the free version. I've logged in with my account, so I have the protected experience. What I can do here is I can just use this as any normal GPT model. I do have an option of playing around with the settings. Start with the regional image of chat, or more precise. This basically uses different models and also sets the threshold for how many answers it generates. So it'll be a bit more pedantic around the data set. So let's go and use balanced. I can literally, from here, I can go and type examples. Let's go with one. And I'm going to do this one. How do I write a formal proposal? So this is going to use a large language model from OpenAI, but since it's inside of Azure, and it's going to use all the information it has available for its lint off. And bingo, let's go look at that. So this comes back quite quickly. This is really awesome. Now, this looks familiar. You think, well, I've done that in ChatGPT. You have, but here's the slight difference. You'll see here I have citations. So one of the things that happens when you use Copilot for Microsoft.com, the source in the background that Microsoft used to ground information is Bing's index. The same way Google has index and your search engine has an index, they use the index from Bing. So all of this information that you see here is not just if you want to be sure that it's actually valid and the AI didn't do some sort of hallucination, it tells you where it got those sources of information from. In some cases, you'll even have hyperlinks or markup in the text. I can do a lot more with this. Let's go into clear that quickly. I can even use it to do some interrogation. So I'm going to upload a picture, and I'm going to procure to pay process, which is standard in the F&O space. And I'm going to go and ask it, sorry, I clicked away. And I'm going to go and ask it to please describe this. Oh, my typing is terrible. Please describe the process in this picture. This is how we know I'm not an AI, because I'm keep on getting my spelling wrong. So natural language was one thing, so you are able to put text in and get text out. But here I'm using natural language, and I'm also adding an artifact. And this is the capability in the GPT-4 models, where you can upload information and is able to actually recurse through the information and find context as well. So here it goes. This is I found a paper process, and this is the process, and it goes and takes from that picture, goes and gets the process for me, and even gives me the process in a visual flowchart, as well as a referencing information around where I can get more information on flowchart examples, etc. So this is the free version. This does amazing things. So really, really cool. There is a notebook option where you can test your prompt, so you can write your prompt up, and then you'll go into a few tests and make sure you're happy with it before you go into playing around with it. But right now, that's available. Copilot at Microsoft.com, and it's quite easy to use. Right, so let's quickly do a bit of a switch up and close it down, and let's have a look at that same experience. So this looks familiar. You're going, well, we just saw that now. Now I've switched over. I've logged into my Office 365 tenant, and I'm using Copilot in the context of Teams. This is something called Teams Chat. And I'm going to use that exact same prompt I had early. And it's actually part of the default prompt boxes. How do I write a proposal? And I'm going to ask the exact same question inside of Copilot Chat. While it's doing that, so let's quickly, now that the context is different, here is when I'd ask the question on the version of the internet, it used the internet as its data source. So it has large language model, it understands natural language questions and answered the question based on what it knew and what is inside the Bing index. I've asked the same question now, so exact same question, and I've asked it in the context, but now I'm logged into my tenant. So the default source is no longer the internet. Just to show you that, if I click on this little plugins bottom there, you'll see that the internet source is switched off. And it's answered the question, and it's just answered it very well. But you'll see that there's little citations, and as I click over, you'll see it's starting to pull data, and those are coming from a whole bunch of different documents. So what it's done now, it's used the information in my tenant that I have access to through my permissions and generate an answer. So it's now grounding it in the IP that I have internally in my organization. And if I click down the references, it actually shows me the files where it got it from. In some cases, it was Word documents. This is the conversation. So it's the same experience, but it's now grounding it in my data. And that's super useful, because this is all the stuff that my company is generating right up front when we spoke about, it's great having all that information, but how do I get to collaborate on it better? Here we go. One prompt, literally 6 words. It's gone out, provided me the answer, and grounded it information to adopted by my organization. That's absolutely amazing. Cool. Let's have a look at the collaboration I mentioned earlier. And we'll switch over to my calendar. A bit of a busy day today. Now, this morning I had a couple of meetings. I have a couple more coming up. One of them we have regularly is our bi-weekly evangelist meeting. I had to leave this meeting earlier. I had a different meeting to go to. And if I click into the meeting, you'll see that there is, you see the meeting people attended. And there is now an option called recap. And this is where the Copilot for Microsoft 365 in Teams, if I've enabled transcription on a meeting, and I have, is able to jump in and give me a recap of what happened in that meeting. So there's a normal playback we get, but straight away I have something called AI notes. And the AI notes basically is where the AI has listened to the transcript and provided notes for my meeting. And if I click into it, it goes and drills down a little bit further. And I can go a little bit further down. And every time when I jump in, you'll see it goes and changes to where we were in the call as well. You'll see this meeting was scheduled for half an hour. If I look down below, it's also identified the topics we discussed today, and I can jump straight through to them inside the meeting context. It's also chaptered up my meeting, so time when we discuss this. So think of the agenda you typically set. This has basically created a virtual agenda based off the topic changes as we went along, and this is the Copilot doing that. It also has something called mentions, and I left the meeting just at about 10:30, and I can see at 10:51, so 20 minutes after I left, Will made a comment and says this is what Troy spoke about, and I can jump straight through to that. So from a collaboration point of view, I wasn't even in the meeting for the last 20 minutes. I now have full context, and I can see when I was mentioned. And this is not Will at mentioning me in the chat. This is him actually just saying my name in the context of the meeting and jumping straight through. If I want to deep dive into this a bit more and get a bit more context out, I have a Copilot button. As I mentioned, there's in the most of the options in the toolbar, you have a little Copilot button. And this little side pane experience, and I've obviously tested a bit for what we're doing today, it gives me a text box experience where I can just go and type any question. But Microsoft also provide a whole bunch of things for prompts where they give me some examples. And one that I haven't done is they generate meeting notes. So I can go click generate meeting notes. The Copilot will go through the transcript or go through anything inside the chat discussion we didn't have in chat. It'll generate the meeting notes for me, and I'm able to then take those meeting notes and then forward that through to the team for validation. Once again, it is a Copilot. It's if the quality of your speakers are bad or microphone is bad, it's not going to be great. But there are the basic key topics, and there are the action items, and I can copy this and go. And it also provides me, once again, if you mouse across all those little 3s and 2s and 1s, it provides me a citation, so it tells me where it got there from. So fantastic way of actually working. I see we have some time left, so we're going to go through 3 more demos around content creation and working with the create, understand, ask concept, and then we'll switch over to having go through Q&A. So I'm inside of PowerPoint, very basic slides. I've got 2 slides. One is a open slide and one is a slide that basically is showing a process that I've written down. The process described how we use your own personal data in Azure AI model, very, very generic and basic. So I'm going to use Copilot here as well, and I realized I might have users that don't understand what retrieval augmented generation is. It might be a term that is not common to them. So I'm going to use Copilot to actually help me out here, because I don't want to go I'm going to go online, go find information, go and vet it, change it, make sure it works well, and all that thing. That's a bit of a pain. So I'm just going to say add a slide about. I'm going to use a little prompt options that it gives me over here, and I'm going to drop the term brag in there, and I'm going to hit send. And what's going to happen now is the Copilot is going to look at the topic, going to get the answer based on what it knows. It's grounded data. It's going to find an image that is most appropriate. And it's not going to work because that's how demos work when we do them in real life. They break. We don't normally have them breaking when we do the testing. So let's try again. Add a slide out. And let's see if we can actually get it to work this time. What it should do is create a new slide with an image and a breakdown of what retrieval augmented generation is. Ta-da! It's done. It's fantastic. Good time, second time. So it's gone off and found information about retrieval event generation. It's even found a picture because it knows it's a search-based context and provided me with a brand new slide. Another thing I could do here is go to the designer option. This has been around in PowerPoint for a while, but it's actually Gen AI powered, but we never knew. I can say, that looks a really ugly slide. It can just apply that. And now I have a brand new slide and it looks amazing. And I haven't had to spend any time finding this information. I can just vet it here and say, that's good. I'll save it and drop it down. How are we doing for time? We got 5 minutes left. So let's move over to something a bit more cool and complex. Microsoft Word. I've opened Microsoft Word. I haven't done anything to it. You'll see from the slides we had earlier, the experience is very similar. And immediately I get the option to draft with Copilot. So let's have a look at what we can do to do this. I could just ask you to do something. So let me go and take copy, cut and paste. And I can say, great, and this is going to be a very basic example, create a recipe for vegan lasagna, or garlic. And that's by hit generate. What it's going to do, it's going to go and use what it knows inside the language model, and it's going to generate content for me. This is one of the ways you can create content inside of almost any of the applications. This is quite a generic example. It's awesome. I'm just getting it there right away. You'll see there's no garlic. You'll see there's lovely directions how to cook. So it's without even using a complex prompt, even following some of our proper prompt examples, it's given me quite a lot of information, and that's just on the fly. So that's really, really awesome. And you'll see straight away, it says, do you want to keep it? Because that's the first thing I need to do. It's a Copilot. It's not there to take over. It's there to say, I'm going to help you. I can regenerate. I can say, try again. I can add more context. I could say, make it based off a French recipe, but I'm just going to say, keep it. And now I have a recipe. So that's quite cool. But what if I've got information already and I actually want to use that information to generate this content? So let's do that. So we created that PowerPoint presentation, the one that had information about the AI models. What if we use that? And I'll say, create a I'm trying to say summary, but it's not working. Oh, the content in this slides. And now I can do something where I go and say reference a file, and I can now reference information that's stored inside a SharePoint and OneDrive, and I can do multiple references. I'm going to use one for now. So I'm actually giving this Copilot a prompt saying, create a summary of content found there. So what it's now going to do, it's going to go and answer that question. It's going to look at that PowerPoint presentation that we created earlier that's sitting inside of SharePoint. It's going to run through it, find the answers. It's going to reason over it and realize it has to do a summary, so it can't just use the picture I had, and it's going to go and generate that for me. This is once again a very simple example, but in the context of using it for being able to work against complex documents or run through, this is a complete game changer in getting from a blank page into where we want to be. I'm not going to say keep it as well, and so it's quite simple to work with. Let's have a look at one more example, and then we'll jump off into Q&A. I think we've got 2 minutes left. What if I already have data? And one of my colleagues, Jonathan, who I mentioned earlier, has sent me this lovely document about a lady called Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace, great story. She was born in the, I think, mid-1800s, and she is regarded as the mother of programming languages. So she was also recognized the potential for AI in 1852, I believe. So when people say AI is new, no, the idea behind it and the concepts behind it have been around for way longer. So it's a 5-page document, and this is great. This is too much to read. I don't know what it's about. It hasn't got any headings or anything. So I'm going to pop up my little Copilot sidebar, and this is where the understanding part comes in. So I've got all this. I can just go summarize this document and let it go and do its thing. Something went wrong, please try again. We'll change topic. One thing you can guarantee with demos is that they will always work when you're not doing anything. So there we go. So here's a summary of the content. That was really quick. So main idea, AWS Lovelace paper analytical engine, contribution to computing, the role of Boolean logic, the possibility of opinionated. So it's giving me a lovely summary. So it's understood the document and give me context back. I once again go in here and I can be more specific. I can say make the summary shorter, make the summary longer. And I can also go into the prompts at the bottom. And you'll see the prompts now I've switched over because it now has context that I have content. And said, like, do you want to do more understanding or more asking? So if we do the more asking option, it gives me a couple ideas like how do I give me specific examples. I don't want to use this. I'm going to pick up something here. So Boolean logic, I have no idea what that is. So let me quickly just copy that and say, what is Boolean logic and why does it matter? So this is the last example of where we're saying, right, I can create things, I can edit things, I can have you summarize things, understand things, but now I'm going to start asking you information about the data. So what this is doing now, it's just using the content inside the document as its source, and it's giving me an answer. So according to the document, and it gives me references to where it found that information in the document as well. So now it's, instead of it being a large language model that's using everything that's linked and the access to the internet potentially and my data, it's saying I'm going to use just this data to answer your questions for you. We have a couple other demos, but we're running out of time, so we're going to actually stop sharing and jump straight to any Q&A. Gareth, any questions that have popped up? I'll check through the panel.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks, Troy. That was really good. So we've actually got quite a few questions here. The first question, what version of ChatGPT is it powered by?
The latest version. So Microsoft have a commitment that as soon as OpenAI release a new model, the new model will be available as part of the experience. For the Copilot or Microsoft Comets version 4.5, it's not the turbo. And for Microsoft Copilot for M365, they're using 4.5.
Thanks,
and
mate.
DALL-E 3 for the designer.
Perfect. And one from Craig here. Can we explore the new Copilot for sales and gain an understanding of how this is different from Copilot included in D365 Enterprise? Aside from integrating with M365 Copilot, what is the roadmap for Copilot for sales?
We don't have enough time to answer that question, Craig. That's a phenomenal question. So there's a lot. There is a summary blog on the different capabilities of the embedded version and the version that you get that you pay for. There is a full list of all the feature, where there's parity, where there's not. Basically, the gist of it is the integration, the Sales Copilot, which we call Viva Sales, lives and works mainly in the context of the dynamic sales application, where Copilot for Sales brings it across the Dynamics data as well as working natively inside of Outlook and Teams, automatically doing categorization, and also it looks across, when you ask questions, it looks across the full ecosystem plus any additional sources for information. It also is moving to a more simple unified interface, as well as moving towards, and they sort of are speaking about it publicly, not just being a Copilot, but potentially bringing some sort of automation into it as well. So you can ask a question and then say, do something, and then it'll do it on your behalf as well. But it's maybe that's a session that we do as a separate webinar.
Yeah, I was going to say, I might, Craig, I'll reach out to you after the event. Even if we set aside a half an hour, we can explore that a little bit more. But yeah, completely fair question. I think we've got a couple of good questions from Lauren here that are pretty fair. So she's tried Copilot for Power Automate to help build flows, but she's found it can get confused easily, even by its own instructions. So the question is, will this kind of thing be improved, and how does Copilot learn?
It will be improved all the time. So that every single application, if you think about it, generative AI became a thing that we actually found out about, even though it's been around for a while, 18 months ago. A year ago, they announced the Copilots. We are working with language models. We were in version 3 when GPT came out. We're now in 4.5, so we're not even 2 models up. So it is a learning curve. Microsoft don't save the data of what you've asked for, but they do get a whole bunch of metrics in the background. So they can continuously improve their back-end prompts and their augmentation. Some of the products, when I started using them, I'll be pretty honest, the Excel version wasn't great, but they keep on making improvements. So yeah, we're constantly going to see improvements along the way. Lauren, in the version for Power Automate, there are some improvement changes already, but yet it is coming over time. From just to answer a bit more question on the detail on Microsoft, I don't think the news recently they announced they create a separate, effectively, entity called Microsoft AI, which is a separate company just focusing on making sure these things work better. They bet the house and the kitchen and the dog and the cat and their wives and daughters and sons on this working. The commitment's there, and it will constantly improve.
Thanks, Troy. Can I teach Copilot a process, i.e. a scoping document, then get it to help write new ones, i.e. prompt user the required data to fill in the scope?
Yes, yes, but. So the answer is yes, and that's through the extensibility. There's a product which used to be called Power Virtual Agent, which has now been rebranded to Copilot Studio and been reimagined from a capability point of view. That's where you can go in, target your own data source, add your own system message, and also add your own meta prompts. And then you can go and use that as a source to have a conversation around it. We can also extend it using Azure OpenAI. We've done that internally with some of our process documentation in Fusion 5. And there is going to be an option coming up, I think it's going to be announced out of preview around about May, June, where you'll be able to create your own custom GPTs using Copilot Studio. So this is all low code, the same way you can do that in the paid version of ChatGPT.
Thanks, Troy. Now, this question's up my alley. Will it only respond in text format? Can I request it to, say, paint a summer landscape and it will give a picture painting?
Yes. So it depends what you're using it for. You'll notice as I jumped around the different products, I know it was a bit quick, that the context changed. So when I use PowerPoint, it generated a picture by default. So I can, using the copilot.microsoft.com, I can generate images. With the Pro version, you get even a lot more. You can use Microsoft Designer to generate an image. You won't generate an image in Word because it's not that's not the context. But yeah, you can use it to generate images. But it's got to be in the context of the right application. I can't go into the Excel version and say generate me a picture. It'll go, sorry, can't do that here. But I can go to Copilot or Microsoft.com and say generate picture of a bald man with a unicorn, with a beard riding a unicorn, and it'll do it.
And this might have been just specific to one of the examples we were showing, but they've asked, will the reverse work, i.e. take some text and make a Visio swim lane process?
Yes, Visio, Copilot for Visio is internal preview, I think, at the moment. It will be coming around soon, and it will then, you'll be able to use natural language or upload a process document. For those on the who have used we've used Copilot, who have used ChatGPT, I think especially the paid version, you can actually ask ChatGPT right now to, you can give it a natural process and say a natural language prompt, and then it'll generate a process for you. And it generates code used by generic flowchart tools like mermaid.io, that you can upload the flowchart code and it will then generate the flowchart for you or the process diagram for you. So that's coming down. It's going to be called Copilot for Visio. That's coming sometime this year.
Thanks, Troy. When will it be able to generate X++ code, D365 FinOps?
I don't know, because I'm not a subject matter expert when it comes to that type of coding, so I don't know. That is the most honest answer I can give you.
Good man. Cool. So yeah, I think actually a lot of thanks in these questions as well to Troy, saying that was a great presentation. So in answer to one of them, yes, there will be a recording available. I will get onto editing as soon as this session is complete, and I'll share that. I also just want to say we do offer a free proof of concept where we'll come to your organisation, give you a little more detailed demonstration of Copilot in action. Let you guys have a bit of a play around with it as well. So when I share the recording, I'll give a link to that. Feel free to reach out, and be more than happy to show you this in action. This is a very condensed 1 hour version of what is a lot of content available there. But I think we'll wrap up there, Troy. I do want to say a very sincere thanks to you for a great presentation. And yes, look, we'll see you all on the next one. This will be the first of many future Copilot events. Keep an eye out on your social media and your email for that. Thanks heaps for joining, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
Good, guys. Take care. Bye.